Welcome to another episode of Peers Over Beers, your favorite digital and social evangelist podcast, with your industry veteran hosts, Chris Detzel. This podcast starts now.
So welcome to another Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel and
Scott Wilder.
Scott Wilder. You're back for another Peers Over Beers with no beers.
Yeah, I felt a little thirsty, so I thought it was time to come back and enjoy the show.
Yeah, I always enjoy having you on the show, Scott. So I appreciate you coming.
Anytime.
We were talking a little bit about on the pre-show is how to scale and also how to embed yourself into other teams, especially if you're part of the team. So I wanted to get some of your thoughts around that because I struggle sometimes, believe it or not, just like other community leaders. And so I thought I would throw this out to you. How does that sound?
That sounds great. Seatbelt fastened. I'm ready to drive.
All right. Well, here goes. So
one thing I wanted to just point out, so for some of your folks who are listening, watching, etc. So CrowdVocate, where I work, has been rebranded. Oops, there we go.
Yeah.
And so now we're called Base. So just to let everybody know, and you can find us at Base.ai. So just a little, you plug your beer mugs. I'm plugging Base.
Hey, no worries. I mean, that's what it's for. Was there a big reason for that, or one you can discuss, or no?
Sure. So I think one thing is Base kind of rolls off your tongue more than the word CrowdVocate. And CrowdVocate, the way the word that is constructed, it's a great name, but it implies advocacy, and there's just so much more than we do besides advocacy. I mean, basically, we're powering your whole customer life cycle and all the different areas that are part of that. So, for example, camp tracking, analyzing all the different activities you have all across the customer's journey. Right? It can involve advocacy, it can involve references, referrals, case studies, customer stories, etc. So it's just thinking much broader. And then also, we really believe in this customer-led growth approach and customer base. Base is
Customer
the place.
Base.
Start with your customers. Imagine that.
I like it. I like it a lot now that you explained it. I saw the background and I was like, what's Base mean? And then you told me during the pre-show. So that's exciting. I like the name customer base. It's Base, but I get that. So, so did anything change like from your team or anything like that, or was it just pretty much just a rebranding and things?
It was just a rebranding. My team, I think we talked about earlier on is, titles aside, but title is, I focus on team is focused on customer engagement, but internally, since we like 4-letter words, we call ourselves the care team. And so we're focused on community, advocacy, resources, and education, CARE. So that charter is pretty much the same, focused on enabling people to, master our products, obviously, but really master their craft and accelerate their careers. It's all about helping, all boats rise with the tide. I think, yes, with the tide. And so basically, we're focused on really leading the customer-led growth industry.
Cool. That is really cool. Maybe we'll have to get deep into next time, kind of what exactly your team's doing and because I'm highly interested in that. But we won't do that today. So today I want to kind of talk about this one person team. And today, even for me at Reltio, I run the community, I run our Reltio Executive Council, and then I'm starting to kind of think about customer-led growth in a bigger way and an opportunity there. But I also report directly into marketing. Back in November, I moved to the marketing team from our customer team. So I used to report into Chief Customer Officer. Now I report into the Chief Marketing Officer. And it was a big change for me because I'm used to being part of the customer org. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so a big shift for me because now I still think about the customer in big ways and how they and education and things like that and how they use our products, getting the most out of the products and things like that. But sometimes it doesn't it doesn't bode well, but marketing is all about the top of the funnel. I mean, that's in general, that's kind of what we're focused in on. And I'm not necessarily, I'm not, I mean, that's not where my mindset is. So how do I kind of think that way? And how do I embed myself into the marketing organization? Even if I can say, I've got all these really cool things that say, when people engage into the community, they buy more, they, engage, the more they're engaged, they tell others about, their, the product. They do a lot of different things from a, renewal standpoint, from a, higher renewal rate type stuff, even when you think of case deflection, but none of that is marketing per se. You know what I mean? Like that's some other organization. And so I just wanted to kind of, thinking about the three things that I own, or at least two and a half. And then, how do you kind of, do either stop doing certain things, or how do you do it all as a one person team and maybe help get resources, in different ways when you can't hire. And then two is, how do you embed yourself into the marketing organization when your focus has been more of the customer type stuff? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So a few thoughts, what you were saying about being in marketing and not focused as much on the top of the funnel, so more and more, and historically, I think we all know that, most of the money goes to the acquisition, top of the funnel, demand gen, but that's
Right.
changing. Forrester's come out with some really interesting recent, data, come out with some data recently, where historically maybe 20%, 30% of the money went to retention. But we're getting to 50-50. And I think, in these economic times, where people are strapped, et cetera, it's accelerated. So COVID, the economy, all obviously related, but all that's accelerating that companies are putting more and more energy into that upsell, cross-sell awareness. And in doing that, they realize that it's really important to build those relationships with customers, and using a community-led play is really key. So I actually think you're in a really good situation. And you might say that, community is not part of top of the funnel. Now, I forget that if you guys have a closed community or not, but there's so many people.
It's open.
Okay, open. So there's so many people that I talk to, when they're interested in, say, a HubSpot product, they'll go to the HubSpot, they'll get a free account, they'll go to the HubSpot community, and they'll kind of learn that way about what support they're going to get from others. So there is a really, so I guess the first thing is that more, retention and, customer-led plays are getting more money. And it's two is that I think that a community does have a big opportunity to help top of the funnel, because more and more people are saying, I don't really trust the company, what they say. So they're going to go to G2, they're going to go to Trust Radius, but they're also going to go to the community to see what the issues are there, right? And the savvy people will do a search or two and figure out okay, these are the top issues. How can I deal with it? It's kind of like, when you buy a product on Amazon, I always check the 1 star, 2 stars before the 5 stars, because I want to know the bad before the good, so
I
to
do
speak.
that too.
So I think, it is a great opportunity. Resources are tighter. And so if I kind of think about that as well, I'm kind of used to that play. I think in my last company, I was spoiled by all the different community moderators we had, et cetera. But when I was at Marketo, we had 100,000 people in the community, and we had one community manager and me. And yes, Liz, who was the community manager, had a lot of superpowers. She's great. She's at Airtable now doing customer marketing, but she was very good at really partnering with the champions, the heavy users, the experts, in building out that community, what basically became the marketing nation. So, we can talk about organization resources, but the step before that is, figuring out how you partner with your customers or the people who are active in the community to help build that community. A term I use a lot is copiloting, with those folks. And they're not all going to say, great things about you, but that's learning opportunities. So I think, Chris, if you're, a one-man show, you've been in the space for a while, so, you know how to figure out and identify those champions, but
Sure.
consider them your external team, and figure out how you can, work with them to build out the community. And then you get into, well, what's in it for them, right? And then the intrinsic and extrinsic benefits as well. But certainly at Marketo, incredible Marketing Nation champion group that are still really close. When I was at Intuit, we called them All Stars. That was earlier this century. And then, certainly at HubSpot as well. I think, the community has always wrestled with resources, right? And I think, we kind of got ahead of ourselves in the last year where everybody was saying community-led growth,
Yeah.
we're going to get more money. And I think the economy has kind of reminded us that it's still difficult to get those resources. And,
That's right.
teams are being cut back because of that. And so that leads to the third question you asked is like, so how do you get SHIT done? How do you get things done? And that's where, prioritization is really important, internal alignment. And, we can talk a little bit more about how to work, with your organization. So.
That's very well said. I think when you're talking about alignment and internal, kind of, you mentioned prioritization, which I think is key, but it's hard. It's really hard for me to say, well, I got to stop doing this. You know what I mean? So sometimes when you prioritize, what is it that you're trying to accomplish at the end of the day? And if it's, look, community still needs to build. It's only a year old. I still need to kind of nurture it, push it. And like you said, even start building relationships to maybe even get some of these users engaged more and really start, getting their opinions on certain things and to see where we can go next and that kind of stuff. But when you're so the positive about the Reltio community internally is that there's a lot of buy-in, if you will, or a lot of interest and people get it. They understand that, that they're excited about it still. So the reason I hesitate is because when you're not putting money or resources or things like that towards something that has had a lot of success, then you kind of wonder. I kind of wonder, like, where's the organization's head? Or where are they thinking? If they don't want to, I understand, times are tough, but sometimes you're like, well, but you're still hiring for this thing. You know what I mean? Like, and so sometimes you kind of wonder, like, have you done enough? And a lot of times I think, man, maybe I haven't. Maybe, I need to kind of continue to kind of push at the top. Like, so for example, we have a new chief revenue officer, and I think there's a huge opportunity because now he owns the entire sales team, but he owns anything that just focuses on revenue. So PS, he also owns CSMs. So all of that organization piece. And so I'm thinking, damn, like I need to start building a relationship with that guy. You know what I mean? And start trying to, understand kind of where he's coming from and things like that. So I know I derailed it a little bit, but would love to kind of think about. So one, I'm in marketing, and the opportunity to really start talking to the CRO is a really good opportunity because sales and marketing are like this or should be like this, working hand in hand or try to be. So what are your thoughts around a new CRO coming in and how I can go to him and talk to him about community? Like, what's the opportunity there? He's new.
Yeah, I think the first thing is get to know him, obviously, or her. And then two is, and that sounds really simple, but that relationship is going to be important, but find out what's, really what's in it for them. What's their goals? What are they trying to solve for? What are their, I don't know if you have company-wide OKRs, we have that here. And so, I know what's, at the end of the day, what's going to solve it for him. And so, if you can find that out and then figure out how community can support that, if they have a customer success background, right? So they're trying to build those relationships. So one thing is like community helps you scale from one-to-one to one-to-many. Two is enablement is really important to him, but it's really hard for, I'm reading this great new book. Somebody just gave it to me I met great new book here. Advertisement. Oh, you can't see it. So it's called Enablement Mastery by Eli Cohen, the CEO of Saleshood, who I met yesterday. But in reading that, we talk about enablement's a real challenge. And that's what a CRO can be focused on, or somebody in the organization. So community can help with that, right? Again, going back to the champions, those are the people who can help, people onboarding, for example. They can provide best practices. So you're really trying to find out what their OKRs are, what their priorities are, and then figure out how community works into that. And then, just say to him, look, I need your support. I mean, I'd be transparent. I need your support. Let's start with one priority first.
Yeah.
Like onboarding. There's so many things that community can do to help, a customer onboard with a product. At Intuit, for example, we had the luxury of embedding community inside the product.
I know, man. It's beautiful.
Right. And it's that's one of the holy grails, and it's amazing. And, the 20 years I've been doing this, I've only seen maybe 2 companies really do that. And it's crazy because take TurboTax, for example, very complex, everybody hates taxes. It's complex, but as you go through the workflow, you can talk to an accountant live or asynchronously, who can guide you through the process and through the product. Right. I mean, that's incredibly powerful. It takes a while to get there, but the point being is that if, onboarding, I'm just picking onboarding is, really key for that person, for that CRO, then, you can make the argument about how community can help. A little thing about onboarding here. So he might say, well, wait, how does that tie to revenue? When I was at Adobe, I was put on this cross-functional team to work on the first mile, which was onboarding in the first 30 days. I was like, wow, 30 days, man. I could fly across the world, come back. I mean, that's 30 days to me is a lifetime. Think about it when you're, when I met my wife, if I took 30 days to realize to continue that, I knew right away. So maybe that's how I'm built. So, so we changed that to what we did is said, within the first 24 hours, we would know if a customer was going to stick with us and what that value would be of the customer. And so, if you can incorporate community into that onboarding play and tell the CRO that this is going to have a revenue impact, and maybe you can model that out depending on your resources, then that person's probably, the CRO is going to be in. He's oh, yeah, okay, you made that case. But you have to get aligned with him in that. And then, alignment is the new strategy. It's really difficult. I can talk a little bit about organization alignment with other parts of the company, but
yeah,
I'll stop there. So I think that's really important. Find out what makes him tick, what's going to make him happy.
I guess that's the answer for all of them.
Yeah.
It's that's kind of the formula for each and every one, right? Each leader. I like the idea of just kind of going back to TurboTax, and that's the example I show. I even do a little demo about not how community is embedded directly into TurboTax, and how you can go in there and ask a question inside of TurboTax. Now they do have a community that you can go to community.turbotax or whatever it is, but you could ask a question and then boom, it posts it to the community. You get an email directly, right? And the email says, hey, you posted the community, and then when you get an answer, you get an email saying you got an answer. And then, and generally it's one of the users that answered it, or somebody that's getting a bunch of points or whatever, because you see it. I've seen it, it says so-and-so is an expert or whatever the title is, and then they answered it, right? I was like, dude, it only took an hour in that case, right?
Yeah.
I was like, it's not just that it's embedded in the product, it's also embedded into the users, that they actually answer the questions extremely fast, because they're rewarded and recognized. I don't know the whole program, but it was pretty awesome because I showed it, and I still show the demo to the VP of our product teams, and even anybody that listens, I shoot that over. And I even we did this, not to get completely off, but we did this hackathon last year, and I worked with our person that runs UX and design within the product, because one of the things that he wanted to do was kind of this self-help chat bot type thing. And I said, perfect. I said, you and I should work together because I think community could be a big part of that, and so we put together this whole deck, and we spent literally hours on this deck and made it kind of really look really good and everything. He's a designer, so he made it really look good and all this stuff animated. We couldn't do a demo because we didn't have a developer to do it, but he still made it look pretty cool just inside the presentation. And at the end of the day, we came out with an outcome of, we could save, from a self-help or from a support standpoint, we could save $3 million within 3 years of just answering those quick hit questions. We didn't get picked. We got looked up and nothing. And I'm like, because it's a hackathon was a developer thing, but it was a nice way to, one, create this really cool PowerPoint that shows what you can do, because now I can take it to different people in the org and show, the value of what a community can bring, right? And so, although I thought that was really cool because I've been trying to push for product, because that is the holy grail, is pushing community into the product directly. For some reason, it's very hard because they have other priorities. They want to build this feature in the product. Self-help is like, but we got other shit to do. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. It's definitely, I'm surprised more companies don't focus on that, because, they keep pushing features, but 80% of those features are not going to be used. Right. And so why not have the community help with the discoverability of those features, for example? But, somebody higher on the food chain than us will figure that out. But design is really important. And, I was talking to Bill Johnson, who's definitely a thought leader in this space, and he's got a background in design. I think, design gets, last time we talked, I said, integrating your employees into the community process is not something that people focus on enough. And so this week, I'll talk about how the whole design aspect and really putting a lot of energy into design. And at Intuit, we used this initiative, and you can Google it, called Design for Delight, which were really small teams, even before growth squads, small teams that focused on the design aspect. But it wasn't just kind of what you see design. It was really, again, partnering with customers to figure out how to really improve the UX experience. And it's outdated. I have a great slide somewhere of when I worked on the Intuit site. I show in my 10 years there, all the different homepages we have, all the research we got from focus groups and usability studies on them. And then we made the changes that we learned from customer interactions, the improvement overall. So we quantify that. So I think as community people, we don't put enough energy into design. Now, part of that is because of the platforms, right? The platforms are kind of limited in terms of what you can do from a design, unless you have money and can, do a lot of customization. But I think that's, if I look into my crystal ball and say, some opportunities for the next few years, operations is one, design is another, employee engagement is another.
Yeah, and I remember Rich Mulliton writing some stuff, or at least posting something on Twitter talking about, a homepage of any online community, right? Like, who is coming to your homepage? It's probably the people that, one, want to see new content on a consistent basis, right? And then, how do you design it that way? Because a lot of people that do come to your community is probably searching on Google if it's open, and coming to some other page that is, with a Q&A or a blog or whatever you're doing, so even designing for that. So there's a lot of things that you can design for, but there's a few things there. Is one is, you've got to have a resource to help design it. The platforms, some can do it and some can't. So for example, like Higher Logic, I'm not sure how you can design the home pages, whatever you like. There's a lot of things you can do there, but to design a discussion page, there's not a lot of flexibility that I know of in that kind of stuff. So, I think you're limited. And then the other thing is trying to find budget for design specifically. Like I agree with that so much that, but like for me, it's like, well, do I spend a lot of time designing this, or do I have another program that I need to do a webinar and create content for and all these other kinds of things? It's a hard balance. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you got to, prioritization. My wife is always like, no, not another project. So I have this metaphor, if I use, called the virtual garage. It's getting crowded in there. So I had to build an add-on to that virtual garage, but that's where I store, ideas for projects and things like that. And, there's plenty of time to get to stuff. You said the homepage. So I've read some of the stuff you were referring to, preaching to the choir here. So Google, community is great for SEO.
Yep.
But what we all figure out pretty quickly is, in my last job, only 20-30% went to the homepage as their first landing page, right? So it's really important to, and if I was quick enough, I could show an interesting graphic here. Maybe I'll try and dig it out while we're talking, but basically the landing pages, if 80% of your traffic is coming from Google, 20% of that or so is only going to go to the homepage. So
that's right.
Really pushing the envelope on design and that initial experience on those category pages or even those discussion pages. And, that's another thing that doesn't get talked about enough.
I agree. I think that we spent so much time, and I'm not saying I don't, I have to, thinking about what that homepage looks like. And yes, today, since we're only a little over a year old, a lot of our, a big percentage of our traffic comes directly from the main page, but that's slowly but surely going like this, right? Like homepage at first is kind of the main because people are coming from it from reltio.com or docs.reltio.com, some referral traffic. But then now you're starting to see a shift. SEO has been doing this. It was at the end last year, right? Because we didn't have any SEO juice, but now it's number 2 on the list. That's about to overtake, and at some point, in the next 2 to 3 years will probably be 80% of our traffic. It just takes time to get there. But I agree. Why aren't we spending more time on and talking about those discussion pages? Even the, like you said, sub pages that people are coming to, and those content pages that if you have an open community, people are finding through Google, right? And so
here, can I show? I don't know if I can share my screen.
You can.
This will be a new play for you here because I don't know people sharing their screens. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So this was a slide that I presented at our Obsession conference. So last week we had several hundred people, 300-400 people at our Obsession conference in San Francisco, focused on customer-led growth. And I gave a presentation about using traditional kind of growth tactics, growth marketing, growth product marketing, and building community. And I showed this slide here that actually has some actual data from one of the companies I worked at. And you can see from, if 80% of your traffic comes from Google, right, only 25% went to the homepage.
Yep.
Right. And so,
which is still significant. So it's not that it's, hey, you shouldn't spend any time on it, but
correct.
How much time versus the discussion pages, and how many companies have actually spent time on the discussion pages? Some I've seen, but not a lot. I mean,
yeah, but these are usually templates. And so how do you think about those templates in terms of like a initial experience, right? All apartments have that back door. And so you need to be ready for them. The person comes in the back door, not the front door.
That's right. No, I love that slide. That's really helpful. So, well, Scott, I think this has been really good.
Do you want to talk about working with other groups in the company, or?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier about you talked about marketing, but you also have other obviously interested stakeholders in the company, whether it's customer success, whether it's you have an education group, whether it's customer support. I've tried different models in different companies, and the most successful one was when I was at Intuit, where Liz was a one-person show running community, and we together developed this, what we call like the captain's model. and a chart that kind of looked a little bit like the chart I just showed, but basically we identified different internal stakeholders that had an interest in community, anointed them captains, and really let them own the user experience in those areas of the site. We used to call ourselves the G-Man. So we set up the G's, guidelines, guardrails, and some other things, but like support. So we had all our support run off the community platform that was opening cases, knowledge base. So that Ken, who was head of support at the time, Ken Law, he was the captain of that, and he owned that experience. And I was there to make sure, like, certain standards were kept, et cetera. Customer success is another example. Lou ran our partner program, and we actually turned the platform into a partner portal because it was too expensive to pay for a partner relationship management system. All right. And so Lou knows partners better than me. So we all got aligned, and it was kind of, this, I'll mix my metaphors here, but it was like an editorial committee, right? And Liz and I were kind of the editors in chief, but all these people own their sports section, their arts and leisure section, et cetera. And that was extremely successful. And it's hard to do that sometimes because of personalities. Like people, it's hard to do that because not everybody will get aligned on share metrics, and that's where you need your Chris, your CEO to support that. But we had, really well-defined shared metrics for the whole project, and we met every week. This was back in the days when you did things in person, and it was extremely effective. And so you don't, need an army to build a community. I talked earlier about empowering your users to copilot and be, help you develop this great platform, this great experience. But there's also the employees, and making them captains and getting them aligned as well. And just like I said earlier, not enough work is done about like how you don't necessarily need all the employees involved and posting on the community, but employee engagement is really key. And there's a woman named Keely who's done a lot of really interesting work around that in terms of the effectiveness of employee engagement.
I think employee engagement is key. And when I go to any company, like I did at Reltio, when I went to Perba, and even Rexel back in the days, the first, 2 months, or let's just say, actually the first 20 days, I just started going through the directory and seeing, different people that I knew I was supposed to talk to or should talk to, an organization that's going to help me kind of be successful in the community, smart people, even executives. I'll just get on the phone, start talking to them. 30 minutes. I think I talked to 40 or 50 people every single time I start a new job, for the first 2 or 3 weeks. And then you got to kind of continue that on over time, but you need to find those people that are going to help you answer questions, maybe get on a webinar or, all those things. I like the idea of, as I kind of look at Reltio, for example, we have a partner team, and I'm starting to get really close to those guys, and they have their own website or partner portal, if you will, that, there's no engagement. All they do is, push out kind of sales things and whatnot, just to have a place that they can do that. And I always thought, why can't we use a closed community for that? You know what I mean? Like,
you should,
yeah, I agree. And so maybe some opportunity there. I've talked to folks, but I think getting people to actually move all that content over, start using the community is a hard thing for them. You know what I mean? And so maybe it's kind of a,
yeah. There's, I don't know your ecosystem that well. Shame on me. But partners are important. There's been, Jill Raleigh and Alder, I'm spacing on his name, but there's been some really interesting stuff. And in fact, right now in parallel, there's a conference around ecosystem. The partner play is really key. And
it is for us too.
I think that in the community space, it doesn't get talked about enough, and it's been really key in terms of, my personal success is early on getting partners involved. When I was at Google, the long tail of AdWords revenue comes from these small agencies. And so we built a whole community for these AdWords agencies. I mean, there's like 50,000 of them, like just think, and I mean, that's probably 100,000. And we built it in parallel with our small business community so that they could work together. And so I just think the partner ecosystem is not thought about enough from us, people like us. And so
for me, it's our community has partners in there. So whenever, one of the things that seems to drive a lot of our engagement discussions is the community shows that I've built. So every week I try to have a community show around either a product, maybe some thought leadership and things like that, or new releases, and that does help drive. So we both have partners, customers, sometimes prospects, and of course employees get onto those. And I think that we can do more with our partners. In my mind, we could have that whole partner portal be on the community in just a space for them. You know what I mean? Look, partners, people think, well, partners are always kind of going, if it's Deloitte or Cognizant or whatever, they're always kind of going in, well, sort of, but they still want to know best practices, how to sell, how to, implement, and those things. We use partners for both selling and implementation, if that makes sense. So I think there's a huge opportunity to do even more and have that team own it,
I totally agree. And like I said, at HubSpot, no, at Marketo, we actually had the partner portal on what was at the time, the Jive community platform.
Yeah.
And extremely, and you can do everything. We had different tiers of partners. So obviously, you can give access to certain people, whether they're gold, silver, or bronze, or type of partners. So I think the community platforms are well suited for that. I think a lot of times the question comes up about content management, because you talked about your team pushing content, but there are things you can do on these platforms as well. I think it's, so I'm a big believer. It's great to hear that you're doing that.
I'm doing some of it, but again, it's more than a one-person job, right? And so you just got to prioritize and see what's going to give you the most bang for your buck, but also kind of the most value to the organization at the end of the day. And it's a hard balance to me, sometimes. Yeah. So, well, Scott, this has been good, man. This time I know you got to get going, but thanks again for coming on Peers Over Beers. I'm Chris Detzel and
Scott Wilder.
Thanks for coming, man.
Thank you very much. Always a great conversation. I'm here if you need anything, whether it's you or anybody out there.
All right.